So I want to talk to you today about selling your company to private equity, but mostly I want to talk about you can't get too worked up if things don't work out initially. You got to give things time to percolate, and in many cases, if things don't work out initially, the next bite at the apple becomes a lot better. And so the real point here, I think, is like if it doesn't work out at first, just try and try again. Be patient, wait for the right opportunity. So I want to share a story with you about my company, but also one of my client companies. So I had a client of mine a number of years ago, had a wonderful company, 40-year-old company, just an awesome company, awesome brand in their community, in their region. And they started thinking about selling. And I had been in there for a couple of years working with them, trying to build their EBITDA and get them ready to sell, that type of thing. And they were very excited about the opportunity. And we got it done. It took about a year and a half. We grew their company, helped them raise their prices, increase margins, and they became very attractive because of the fact they were a 40-year-old company and doing about 30 or 35 million in revenue. So they were a real attractive target. A lot of companies were after them. So they finally kind of hooked up with one of the private equity groups and started going through the due diligence process. And that's about like having an enema and a colonoscopy every day for, 3 months, 4 months, whatever. It's not very fun. You got to be ready for it, which is a topic for a different discussion about getting ready for that, because you can make it easier on yourself. But she goes through the process, and it's excruciating. She got a 40-year-old company. They got a lot of books to go through, a lot of complicated just business processes they've developed over the years. And they finally get it done, and she gets down to an offer, and they actually set a closing date. And as the weeks went by and they were wrapping up all the due diligence, she started getting kind of I just want to say kind of women's intuition, maybe her sixth sense, but she just wasn't really kosher with the way things were going down. She couldn't even put her finger. I remember her calling me one time. It's like, I can't put my finger on it, but something doesn't feel right. And I'm well, you just gotta make the right decision. It's a big decision. It's generational wealth for you and your family, and maybe. Just you got to follow your gut, basically. She gets down to where the weekend before the closing, I think closing was like on a Tuesday or Wednesday, she calls me on a Sunday night. She goes, I can't do it. I said, you can't do it? She goes, I just can't do it. I can't pull the trigger. And she had her reasons, but a lot of it was just uneasiness, that she just didn't feel like something wasn't right. And so I encouraged her to follow her heart. Her instincts have been pretty good over 40 years. She built an amazing company. So you really can't argue with her instincts, and her business acumen, and especially her marketing acumen was outstanding. And so she pulled the plug in the whole thing Sunday night. And of course, the private equity people were like, what the heck's going on? And we put all this money and time into due diligence. It costs private equity a lot of money to go through due diligence. They're not uncommon to spend $100,000 on, accountants and lawyers and all that kind of stuff, maybe $200,000. It's an expensive process for them as well. But she pulls the plug. And of course, they got upset, but things settled down after a couple of weeks, and she got back to work. And we continued to go out there and visit with her and her company and train the folks and get things, just continue to move right along. And it turned out to be a genius move on her part, because she was looking at selling that company for somewhere in the 35 to 40 million range was the initial offer. And based on the EBITDA, that seemed like a pretty reasonable offer. But by waiting 6 months, she got the interest of some other groups, and she ended up getting a 15 multiple, which drove the sell price to somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 to $65 million. I mean, talking about patience is a virtue. She trusted her gut. She trusted her business sense. It didn't feel right. It wasn't going the way she wanted, and she put the brakes on it, and lo and behold, it made her another, tens of millions of dollars. So that's what I say. If you're going through the process, you're in the process, and things don't seem like they're going right, you can't panic. And I would tell you, there's good private equity groups out there, and there's bad private equity groups. And sometimes the pressure that you feel, the anxiety you start feeling over the 2 or 3 months of due diligence, you start thinking about cashing out. You start thinking about that house on the beach and different things. And private equity knows that. They know that you're just so anxious to do it. You're planning all the things you're going to do. There's the whole process is exhausting mentally. It's just emotionally completely exhausting. And so they kind of count on you just getting tired, just getting exhausted with the whole process. And just because it's not uncommon, they'll come back right at the last minute with some adjustments based on their due diligence, and it could be millions of dollars. And they're counting on the fact that you are exhausted with the whole process. Like you just want to throw your hands up. You've been doing it for 3 months. You haven't slept well. You're anxious. You're nervous. You're excited. All these different things. So when they come to you and they try to change the game on you right at the end, you can't break weak and panic. That's what they're counting on. They're counting on you getting nervous, getting exhausted, and saying, just the hell with it, let's just close. She didn't do that. When she didn't feel right, she didn't like all the terms, she held her water, right? She held her powder, as they say. And she just waited, and 6 months later, millions, $20-something million more. So I think the moral of the story is very simple. As they say, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And if your private equity buyer starts changing the game on you and you don't feel like it's fair, you don't feel like it should be done, don't be afraid. You got to be able to walk away from the deal because they're counting on you being exhausted. So you can't give in. You can't throw in the towel. You'll cost yourself millions of dollars. So in my situation, many of you may know, I built this company. I started in 2019. It was a 5-year plan to build it and sell it. We grew it from $0 starting in 2019. By the time we were done in 2024, in July, $42.5 million in revenue. By that point, we were generating a little over $2 million in EBITDA and other depreciation, that type of stuff. And so our plan from the very beginning was to sell. So starting 2 years before this, I had a conversation with a private equity group, a group of really good guys, by the way. And they kind of liked what they saw we were doing, where we were going, where we were growing, that type of thing. But we also had a relationship with one of the big box stores that they were not a big fan of. And you'll find that a lot of private equity groups are not fans of that, but there are several that are. So it's just about finding the right group that aligns with what you're doing in your business. But we had this conversation. I went out to see them, and very impressive group, but they just like, we're not really into that whole big box store. And so I took it at that. I'd known these guys for a long time. I've worked with a lot of private equity folks and different guys in the industry, different women in the industry. So no big deal. So we continued to grow. We weren't ready to sell at that point anyway. So a couple of years go by, and I start talking to another group, and now we're kind of getting ready. We're about ready, right? We're cooking, we're making some money, and we're pretty attractive to one of these groups. And we hadn't signed the LOI yet, but we were like a week away from signing the letter of intent. And I happened to run across the other guys at a convention, the guys from the other group. And they said, how are things going? I think things are going great. We're fixing to sign a LOI with so-and-so private equity group. And by the way, that group is Apex. I'm very happy to tell you we eventually worked out a deal with them. I'll get to more of that in a moment. But they're just a great group of professionals. And but I told this to the first group, and they're like, what do you mean you're getting ready to go under LOI? Why didn't you even give us a shot? I said, well, primarily because 2 years ago you told me you weren't interested in a company that was relying on big box stores. He's like, it'll be no problem now. We're 3 times, 5 times bigger than we were 2 years ago, and now even your stores will be a very small segment of very small percentage of our overall portfolio. And I knew these guys. I just met the Apex guys. I didn't really know them yet, but I knew these guys for a long time. So I said, okay. So they came out to Colorado Springs. They did their little survey, checked everything out. We proceed down to letter of intent. And by the time we get down there, I'm kind of going back and forth between two, which is another point. Try to get a couple of people involved so you have a plan A and a plan B. And we sign the letter of intent, and we start the due diligence process with the very first group. And I, at the time, told Apex I couldn't do it, which was, turned out to be a mistake. But we went with the other group. We get down to due diligence. This is going on. Due diligence typically will take 2 or 3 months. And we're probably a couple of months into it. And I started getting that weird feeling like something was going too slow. Why weren't we moving more quickly through this process? And we were scheduled to have a meeting with some attorneys. And about 2 minutes before the Zoom meeting started, I see my phone light up with a call from the main guy at this group. And I knew right away it was not going to be good. I pick up the phone. He's like, hey, did you see the message? We canceled the meeting. I'm like, no, I haven't seen it yet, but I hear what you're saying. What happened? He says, well, our money folks, they're pulling out because of the big box stores. I'm like, what do you mean? You guys told me you were cool with the big box stores. I know it's not on us. It's on the money people, right? There's always somebody else to pass the buck. But it really, really frustrated me because it really set us back for months. And it ended up costing me money, which I'll talk to you about that later. But I was really, really frustrated because, they had told me 2 years earlier they were not going to do the big box stores. They kind of changed their mind, but I never felt like they were fully committed. And I should have listened, like the lady I told you about earlier. She listened to her inner voice. I didn't, right? Dudes are less prone to listen to that sixth sense, I guess. And I kept plowing through, and then right at the end, carrot got yanked away, right? I felt like Charlie Brown when Lucy moves the football, and we're flat on our ass. We just wasted 4 months, and I didn't know if we had anybody else interested. So I got off the phone with these guys, and the first thing I did was call my contact at Apex. And the guy, Jake, super, super nice guy, funny guy, charming guy. I take the call, say, how you doing? And he says to me, he goes, man, I've been hoping this call would come. He knew as soon as I called him that the other deal, something happened. And he goes, man, I've been waiting for this call. And I said, what call is that? He goes, the call to tell me you want to talk again. It didn't work out. And I said, well, you must be like Karnak the Magician or something, or Karnak the Magnificent, whatever Johnny Carson did back in the day. And so we started talking and put a deal together, and we ended up closing from the day of signing the letter of intent to closing was 8 weeks. 8 weeks exactly, from Monday to 8 Mondays later. We closed the deal. Super clean transaction. We had got into our shoulder season, and our shoulder season by then was not as good as our shoulder season the year before. So our trailing 12 was down a little bit. And when I said earlier it cost us a couple of $1 million, it's because our trailing 12 was down. If I had gone with Apex initially when our trailing 12 was up, I'd have made more money. But we waited that 4, 5, 6 month period. We ended up getting a couple of months that weren't as good as the previous year. So our trailing 12 wasn't looking so hot, and it cost us some money. The good news is the relationship with Apex has been outstanding. It's been a simple, clean, honest, transparent transaction. We've been nothing but happy about it. They hired me as a senior VP of sales for their Mountain West region, so I'm working with a bunch of their other companies. Obviously, we are keeping an eye on our old company. We have some of the money tied up in an earn-out. But it really, really worked out to be good for us. And so I guess I tell you all that to tell you this. Don't get dismayed. Don't get discouraged if it doesn't work out the first time. And don't let that fear prevent you from trying. You got nothing to lose until you sign on the line that is dotted. Yeah, you can always back out. Listen, due diligence and the letter of intent is just like anybody can get out of the deal. It's just basically all the letter of intent does is it gives that private equity group confidence that you're not trying to find other buyers out there, right? That you've agreed this is who you're going with. But if they want to get out, if you want to get out, I mean, you can. You just can't. You can't be having conversations with other PE groups while you're dealing with them through due diligence. It's only fair, right? Everybody's got to have a fair shot. But don't get nervous and not do it. Don't get panicked if it doesn't work out. In the first case I told you about, it put a bunch of money in their pocket. In my case, it actually cost us some money, but it turned out to be a much better relationship. In fact, part of the reason, remember, this was a 5-year-old company, not exactly, the most desirable company to buy. They like older companies, right? And the older you are, more established, of course, the more money you make, the more valuable you are, right? But it did work out in that it was a simple, clean transaction, completely transparent, no brain damage, no regrets. And I got an opportunity I'm out there working with their dealers now, which, there's some certain, compensation attached with that turned out to be real generous, real nice. And we're bringing companies into Apex, and we get a little spiff when we bring a company to them. So everything worked out. So don't panic. You gotta, if at first you don't succeed, try again. Don't get upset. Don't get anxious. Don't get scared. Don't get desperate. Above all, don't get desperate, because if you get desperate, they'll that can cost you a lot of money. And by the way, if you're getting letters every week addressed to you about this stuff, don't fall for the okie doke. Don't fall for it. Give me a call and let's talk about it, because there's some good folks out there and some not so good folks out there, and it's downright shady folks out there. Some of the stuff that I've heard over the years is mind-boggling. So I just want to really encourage you, don't be afraid to take the leap of faith, right? It's a chance for you to create generational wealth for your family, to capitalize on all your decades of hard work, to put yourself in a position to really retire and have the time to enjoy all the money that you've made. But if it doesn't work out at first, try and try again. Eventually it will work out. And when it does, I'm going to tell you something. It's a pretty good feeling when you sit down there and you check out your bank balance and that wire transfers in there. It makes it all worthwhile. Keep up the good work. Keep up the faith. Get out there, kick some ass, take some names. We'll see you next time.